Welcome back to College Sports The Geeks. It's episode 6. That's a lot that happened last weekend. It was kind of surprising at certain points, but it was always a doozy. It was the first time we were able to watch college football for an entire day together. So, what were your thoughts on kind of everything that happened there and just overall?
Well, Derek, I learned that you talk a lot during games. I already kind of knew that. By the way, I sound like crap today. It's my Jordan flu game. I'm powering through. Derek, Boise State, big time champs. I learned a ton on Saturday. That was the most fun conference championship Saturday since the playoff era started. Alabama, Georgia was a doozy. Florida State, Louisville was an awful game, but it was fun. Michigan, Iowa, an awful game, but it was fun. We had fun. And I feel like we didn't learn too much about each of the teams we already knew. The one biggest takeaway, Washington is for real. Vegas, stop doubting them. They're already an underdog in the playoffs. I didn't learn a lot about each team, Derek. They kind of left the weekend feeling the same about all these teams. And what I do know is it's wide open. Any of the four teams in the playoff can win the national championship.
Yeah, I think it's wide open. When you look at these games, and we'll just kind of go through a couple of them. Liberty, New Mexico State. I was a little surprised on Liberty's defense. They did give up 35 points on Friday, so that was kind of interesting. Um, but in terms of first, let's just talk Friday. Oregon, Washington. That game really wasn't much of a surprise. I had it kind of in that field goal situation, and Washington ended up pulling away. Not really pulled away, but they kind of had that game for the majority of that game. They ended up winning 34-31. Nothing really to learn too much there, except for that Dylan Johnson, that Washington now is starting to use the run game. They hadn't really used it during the regular season, but now they're using it. Dylan Johnson, I think, is a huge underrated back where you're talking a couple years. I think he has 1 or 2 years left at Washington. He's going to be a guy you're going to be talking about in the NFL draft. It's probably round 2 guy, round 3 guy. And I think this guy is definitely an underrated back who can definitely be for real, without a doubt.
Everything about that Washington offense is for real. Penix, Dylan Johnson, you got those three stud wideouts, Odunze, McMillan, and Jalen Polk. All three are probably going to be picked in the first 3 rounds of this year's draft. And it was crazy to me. They were 9.5-point dogs against Oregon. The disrespect level was insane. Michael Penix throws darts all over the field. He can thread the needle. He is so good on putting zip in the ball and putting it exactly in the window needed. He'll probably throw one or two to the other team each game too, but he throws perfect tight window spirals that I haven't really seen any other college quarterbacks make this year.
Yeah, and when you look at the game, there's talk about Bo Nix going in the first round. There's talk about Michael Penix now starting to drop. Who knows what the situation is there? I think at the end of the day, both quarterbacks played well. I think the biggest difference was Washington had a better run game than Oregon. I don't think it was necessarily Penix outdueled Bo Nix or vice versa. I think it was just was more of a complete team offensively than the Ducks, which is kind of surprising to say that because Oregon has been known for their run game and Bo Nix has been successful this year. But Dylan Johnson came to play and he was a huge reason why the Huskies won that game.
Facts and the Studley performance by Washington raised it. One that as soon as Oregon scored 3 straight touchdowns, Michael Penix goes right down the field, gives Washington the lead back. They do not break. They know how to win close games. What they have like 8 single-digit wins this year. People are like, well, that means they're fraudulent. No, that means they know how to get it done in crunch time, and that is super important.
So we're going to go a little bit differently when talking about Saturday. We're going to go from the basically like the last games up to the top. So Florida State, Louisville. Florida State won that game 16-6. It was just pretty much a brutal game to watch. Florida State's defense, Jared Verse, he's for real. This guy is going to be a top 10 pick. He's that good. He's a great edge rusher. I personally would have him as my. It's touch and go. I might have him as my second best edge rusher, but behind Dallas Turner. UCLA edge rusher is good too. So you got 2 top 3 edge rushers, in my opinion, who should be in the top 10, top 15 for this year's draft class. But when you look at that game in particular, was there anything really learned in that game? To me, it just sounded like Florida State's got a great defense and their offense kind of struggled a little bit just because you're on your third string quarterback, Brock Glenn. Not is he really that guy? I don't know. He just seemed like he was more of a game manager, but didn't really have a ton of production in that game.
I mean, he threw for 55 yards. I learned that Jack Plummer is horrible. He played awfully in this game. Jack Plummer missed some wide open guys over the field. I see why I thought Louisville fans were crazy when they're complaining about their quarterback when they're 10-1. But Jack Plummer lost the game for Louisville. He missed open guys. FSU's defense is studly, don't get me wrong. But Jack Plummer was missing open guys, taking sacks for holding the ball too long. But Jared Verse, he reminds me a little of Kayvon Thibodeau, the way he gets off the edge and the number 5. But he comes across and he can fly, the Albany transfer. They got some good guys back in the secondary still now. But on offense, you're right. It was not a good performance. Keon Coleman dropped some passes too from Brock Glenn. It was not the performance they needed to give the committee confidence that they can hang with one of the best teams in the country. Because Louisville is not one of the best teams in the country.
Yeah, they just didn't do anything in that game. And you mentioned Plummer, not the guy. I mean, Plummer wasn't really the guy at Purdue. I didn't think he was really that guy, anyways. Throughout this season, he's shown glimpses of what he can do, but to me, it was just glimpses. It was nothing really special. Kind of in the realm of a lot of people thought Daniel Jones was the guy. He showed glimpses. And see, I mean, that's the biggest question mark with the Giants. But as we continue, Michigan, Iowa. This game surprised me a lot. In the terms of that, Michigan only scored 26 points. Iowa scored 0. Iowa, I thought would get a field goal, but obviously their offense just is god awful. Their offensive coordinator resigned in the middle of the season, basically for the end of the season, because he knew he just couldn't get the job done, and he didn't want his father to have to fire him at the end of the season. So Michigan only 26 points against Iowa. I know you're a Michigan guy, Michigan State guy. Um, is this a cause for concern? Only putting up 26 points against Iowa?
Nah, Iowa's defense is good, no matter how you shape it. Iowa's defense limits every team they play, good or bad. Their Michigan's defensive performance was dominant against Iowa. Michigan's defense wouldn't let Iowa and Deacon Hill, who's not a Power 5 quarterback at all, move the ball an inch. I don't really have concerns over Michigan only scoring 26. They kind of played the field position game, the kick the field goals games a lot. I think in a game against a team like Alabama, they'll be much more aggressive in their decision making. But they knew they were playing an inferior opponent, and they knew Iowa wasn't going to score a lot of points. And they knew they just had to win the game. So Jim Harbaugh played very conservatively, and it kind of worked out. And it was the smart decision in that game. But no, I'm not concerned at all. I don't really think it matters.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. I just think that when you talk about Iowa, yes, they've got a great defense, but the expectations for this game were kind of to be a blowout. I mean, we both kind of had larger blowouts. But overall, I understand you're not concerned, but if I was a Michigan fan, I might be just a little bit concerned because it's about how you end, and 26 points against an Iowa team. It's not great. It's okay, but I think there could be work to be done on the offensive side for Michigan. But as you move on to more games, we'll talk Sun Belt real quick. Troy beat App State 49-23. We both had Troy winning this game. I don't know how you thought the score was going to be, but I did not think the Troy offense was going to put up 49 points. I thought it was going to be more of like a 35-23 type of game. So Troy's offense was really good on Saturday. So what were your thoughts just overall in that game?
Detroit Trojans, baby. Big win for them. Now they got their first bowl game ever against a Power 5 opponent to play in Duke. Mike Elko just left Duke. Troy might have a chance to beat Duke. I think they're playing in the Birmingham Bowl. Yeah, like you said, John Summerall's done a fantastic job at Troy. He's completely turned around the program since coming over from Kentucky. Big things ahead for Troy, and it doesn't look like Summerall is leaving this offseason either to go find a Power 5 job, which means continuity, and Troy can look for their third consecutive Sun Belt title again next year. But next year, James Madison will be eligible for the Sun Belt title, and we wish Troy and James Madison got to play in this one.
Yeah, I think that would have been a much better game. James Madison, head coach, going over to Indiana. So James Madison, we'll see if they're going to be good next year as well. But SMU Tulane, we both had SMU. I thought there was going to be more offense in this game. 26-14, SMU wins. I think Michael Pratt, he might be entering the portal. It's still kind of up in the air at this point, but I don't know if you really want him if you're a Power 5 school. You put up 14 points against an SMU team, which has okay defense, but it's not that great. I don't know, man. Tulane just not seemed to getting it done this year, and that's a to me that's a cause for concern. You have Michael Pratt, you got weapons. I understand, the situation with Willie Fritz. He could have possibly got a new job. He stays. Maybe he leaves now, but I think he's probably going to stay. But at the end of the day, Tulane losing this game, that to me, that's a big cause of concern, especially with Mike Pratt possibly going into the portal.
Yeah, and especially since SMU was playing without their starting quarterback, Preston Stone. So you have a backup quarterback who goes to Tulane. And about Willie Fritz, he actually just accepted the Houston job. So he is gone. He's going to the Power Five. He's going to be Houston's new coach. Weird job for him to step up. I feel like Willie Fritz was mentioned for tons of big jobs. Kind of weird for him to go there. So maybe he was distracted in that game. But SMU, yeah, as you said, I was expecting a lot of points. That's what I kind of think the American Athletics a little like the Big 12. You expect a lot of shootouts in these games. So it was weird to see a defensive battle and SMU got the win, but they did not get the group of fives bid to the New Year's Six. Like some thought they should. We are not two who thought they should, though.
Yeah, I think that was pretty clear. Before we go to the SEC game, because that was kind of a huge game that happened. Miami, Ohio beats Toledo. Both of us picked Toledo in that game. We were a little surprised Miami, Ohio really stepped up, but the head coach, he's been there for a couple years. Miami, Ohio has had success as of late, so it's not a huge shocker. Still, I thought there was going to be more points in the scoreboard, 23-14. I thought it was probably going to be like 28-23, 28-21, just a little bit more, but I know it was going to be more of a defensive game. But what are your thoughts on Toledo?
Brett Gabbert, Blaine Gabbert's brother, quarterback Miami, Ohio. Pretty good game. Pretty good game. Chuck Martin, their head coach, Miami, Ohio, has been there forever. And in the MACtion, what I've learned is every year it seems the favorite loses the MAC title game. But you're right. Jason Candles had a fantastic year at Toledo. They lost their first game to Illinois, or else they probably would have been ranked and they would have been the favorite to go to the New Year's Six. But that's a tough loss. We saw it. There was a lot of weird stuff. It was MACtion football. Missed field goals, ejections for targeting your favorite. It was just an odd kind of back and forth action game. Miami, Ohio, late touchdown to go up 2 possessions and steal it. Just action. I don't even know how else to describe it. It was just a weird football game where every possible scenario happened.
Yeah, there was a lot of targeting, not just in that game, but kind of throughout the entire weekend. I want to say there was like 3 or 4 targetings throughout the entire weekend. But as you move on to the Big 12, Texas beat Oklahoma State. We thought it was definitely going to be a lot closer of a football game, but Texas just pulled away. The stuff that happened before the game, stuff that happened, on social media, stuff like that. Texas really took to heart and they wanted to win that football game big time. Quinn Ewers stepped up big. They even had their backup quarterback come in the game. A huge thing for Texas was Jonathan Brooks, their running back who was hurt from what it was an ACL, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he on the last play of the game was in the backfield with Arch Manning, who was ended up sealing the game for the Texas Longhorns. Such a nice thing to see. Jonathan Brooks meant so much to the Longhorns. They still got backs in back of them, but I mean, I think if Texas had Jonathan Brooks and Xavier Worthy also got hurt in that game, if they had all these guys, you're talking about a team where college football playoff. I think this team is. I still think this team is worth, the college football playoff. But this is a team that I think could be very dangerous if they had all those guys. Without those guys, I still think they are dangerous, but I'm not so sure that they're going to be, at the elite level where they could be, and it be a surefire. Hey, they're going to win the national championship without those 2 top players. But we shall see. What were your thoughts on the Texas Oklahoma State game overall? I mean, Ollie Gordon was pretty much not that guy in that one.
Well, yeah, and the game script wasn't set up for him to run. Derek, I'm an animal lover. I hate Oklahoma State forever now. Disgusting fan base showing by what they did on Friday before the game. I was ready and for Texas to just run right through him, and Texas just ran right through him from the start. Quinn Ewers cooked, set all kinds of Big 12 title game records, and Texas is dangerous. Xavier Worthy should be back for the playoff. Obviously, Jonathan Brooks won't be back for the playoff, but CJ Baxter, Robinson, both backup running backs stepped up and filled the void. They're going to be a stud. They're going to be an awesome game against Washington, and Texas has a chance to win the national championship because they're loaded. And Quinn Ewers right now is playing as good a football as any quarterback in college football. He's probably coming back to next year. Now, remember, Texas already beat Alabama once, so they have a little advantage there, maybe. Steve Sarkisian can coach offense like anyone else, and they're explosive. They're explosive. Any play can go to the house. We saw that on Saturday afternoon, and it's just I wouldn't want to play them. Oklahoma State didn't even need to show up. Texas just cooked them. From the second they walked in the building, the game was over.
Yeah, I think Texas is one of those teams where it's not talked about. They were 7th seed. You could have had them a little bit higher. There was talk, are they better than Oregon beforehand? I don't know. It was kind of touch and go at that point. I'm a huge Texas guy. I think they're for real this year. Yes, they lost to Oklahoma in a close game, but Dylan Gabriel went off in that one, and it's a rivalry game, so anything can happen in rivalry games. We see it time and time again. Real quick, let's go to the Mountain West title game and Boise State winning big, 44-20. I was going berserk probably for the entire first half. But once everything kind of settled in, it seemed like smooth sailing for the Broncos. Genty, absolute dog. He's a beast. Who, their quarterback and Green, George. I mean, everything seemed to be working. The only question could have been like their defense. They did give up 20 points against a UNLV team, but overall, just a successful, dominating performance by the Broncos.
Well, I mean, the defense actually only got 14 because one of the tutties was Taylor Green pick six. So, I mean, that was a great performance by the defense to shut down the Mountain West's most explosive offense. But you're right. What a day in Las Vegas. Boise State, 4-5 to start the season. Andy Avalos gets axed after they beat New Mexico. Spencer Danielson comes in, leads them to 2 huge wins over Utah State and Air Force. What does Boise do? They go to the Mountain West title game and boat race UNLV in their house. Taylor Green, man, he's the best player in the Mountain West. He's the best player in the Mountain West. He can throw with the ball and he can dice you. Now, Ashton Jeanty might have something to say about being the best player in the Mountain West, but I mean, Ashton Jeanty, every time he gets the ball, he can go to the house. He looks like so many and plays like so many running backs from Boise State before. He's awesome. He gives you shades of Alexander Madison. He gives you shades of all of these dudes like Jay Ajayi beforehand. It wasn't even close, Derek. It wasn't even close. After Taylor Green threw that pick six, let him right down the field, they scored a touchdown. And the chunk plays, we have not seen this from Boise's offense all year. Where was this Boise team all year? I don't know, but it happened the last 3 games, and that's why Spencer Danielson is no longer the interim coach. He's the full-time head coach.
Yeah, I think the only question mark with Green in that game, and you were out of the room at the time, but when he threw that interception, I was berserk. I was
I
ticked
heard.
off. I was
I
pissed
heard.
off. It was just not something that I wanted to see. But I think the explosiveness of this Boise State offense is really what led them in this game. You talk about it. I mean, Taylor Green, 12 for 15 for 226 yards. I mean, that's something that you just don't see from a Boise State quarterback. But at the end of the day, he ran in for 2 touchdowns. So that just shows how his ability to run when he's 6'6", 6'7" as a quarterback. I mean, that just shows what he's capable of, and he's definitely got to be in the race. I would personally have him over their backup in Madsen, but we'll see
Not
what they do. I think Taylor Green is the guy for next year, and I think Genty's got to stay. George is going to transfer. I mean, George is going to not transfer, but he's going to probably leave to go to the NFL because of his years out. But Dubar, he's going to be the guy. He didn't have a lot of attempts. He had a couple of plays that he was in, but no carries in that game. I think he's going to be the guy next year. I think this is a team that has the chance to make the New Year's Six next year and be in the playoff because they're going to 12 instead of keeping it to 4. But SEC, you picked Georgia. I mean, I picked Georgia. You picked Alabama. Alabama wins the football game in a close game. It was a game that Alabama won 27-24, but I'll be honest with you, it didn't seem like a locked-in game where I was paying attention to it 24/7. Maybe it was just the fact of Boise State was playing at the same time, but it didn't seem like it was as entertaining of a game as I personally would have hoped for. That Washington-Oregon game, I tell you what, that was a beauty, but Alabama, Georgia, great football game like always. What were your thoughts overall in that football game?
I mean, the defenses were just tremendous on both sides. They were getting after each quarterback. And my biggest takeaway is Jalen Milroe is the best player on the field on Saturday, and that's why the team that had him won and the team that didn't have him lost. The game scripts are so similar to 2021. I don't have to go through the whole scenario about Bama's comeback win against Auburn, same as 2021. Georgia gets up on Alabama early in the game. Bama comes flying back and takes a double-digit lead. And Derek, it was just a fantastic game, and Nick Saban knows how to win. He's won 9 straight SEC championship games he's appeared in. And Kirby Smart still only has the one win against Saban. Granted, it's a huge win. He won the national championship game over Nick Saban in Indy 2 years ago. But if you're Georgia, we talk about how Florida State got screwed. If you're Georgia, man, you're number 1 team in the country. You lost to Alabama, who you can argue is the best team in the country right now based off the way they've played since their loss to Texas. And you fell 5 spots. If this was any other week, not the final week, Georgia would not have fallen 5 spots. They're clearly one of the 4 best teams in the country. I'm not trying to argue for them to make the playoff. They don't need to make the playoff in this scenario because there's undefeated teams and clearly teams that are more deserving. That's just such a tough blow for Georgia. 12-0, number 1 team in the country, clearly, and to stumble in the SEC championship and completely miss the playoffs is brutal. And hats off to the whole Alabama team. They played without their starting running back, Jason McClellan, but Jalen Milroe just made the plays time and time again. And Alabama's defense showed up and put pressure on Carson Beck, who looked shaky for the first time all season.
I mean, you look at the stats between quarterbacks. The biggest difference, Milroe has 2 touchdowns, Beck had 0. But if you want to talk about completion percentage, if you want to talk about yards, that goes to Carson Beck. So I don't necessarily think he had a bad game necessarily. I just think at the end of the day, Georgia was not able to get a passing touchdown. That's kind of the biggest difference. When you look at it rushing wise, Georgia, they had 3 touchdowns. They had 3 rushing touchdowns. But if you look at the yardage, 78 yards for Georgia running the football, 114 for Alabama. Alabama only had 1 rushing touchdown. At the end of the day, the yards, when you compare passing and rushing all together, total yards, they're pretty similar, but they're tied passing touchdowns and they're tied rushing touchdowns. It was a field goal. That was the biggest difference in the game when you talk about it, because Georgia was 1 for 2 from field goals and Alabama was perfect. That field goal was the difference in that game. That's the reason that Georgia lost that football game and a reason why they didn't make the playoff. But as you move on a little bit, we talk about the playoff. Now, I kind of gave you my outline last week, guys, and I said, don't be surprised if Florida State is out. That was, I guess, if you want to call it my hot take or Derek's delusions or whatever you want to take it, but that was correct. Florida State out. And you look at this, and I don't know how you feel about this top 4, but I have been adamant about how I love this. You talk about Michigan 1, that makes sense. They were a lock because they beat Iowa. Washington, they're a lock. Pac-12 champion, they're in. So you have the first 2 spots in, and I think we both can agree Michigan, Washington, 1, 2 makes sense. Michigan at 1, Washington at 2. It's a little bit closer than the experts think, I think, but I think it's still Michigan 1, Washington 2. And then when you have this group, you have Texas, Alabama, Florida State, Georgia. Now, how I dissect this is Texas has to be above Alabama, and Alabama has to be above Georgia. Therefore, in this scenario, the property works. So that means Texas would have to be above Georgia. Therefore, now you're just kind of manipulating it. Texas has to be over Alabama, and Alabama's over Georgia. So however you word it, you cannot have Georgia in the playoffs. So that's why Georgia's out, in my opinion. I don't know if you first, do you agree with that, or how do you set up just those rankings before I even go into why Florida State's out versus the other guys?
No, I agree with you. I think it's tough for Georgia that they have to be placed behind Texas, but there's no really other way to word it right there. Now, personally, I think it's brutal. I think it's a tough decision to leave a 13-0 team out, even if they're playing with their 3rd string quarterback. Now, I said that to you. I said that Florida State should have been the 3 seed and Texas should have been the 4 seed. I thought that's what the committee would do. Now, I didn't never necessarily say that that's the right decision. I think the committee picked the very best 4 teams right now. I think the committee tried to thread the line between most deserving and best. And when you compare the matchups right now, Alabama, Michigan, Texas, Washington, this shapes up to be one of the best playoffs we've ever seen. Now, you put Florida State in to play Washington or Michigan, they probably get boat raced right now based off the way their offenses looked recently and the fact that they're going to play two explosive offenses. It could get ugly fast. So I think the committee therefore did the right thing by setting up the playoff with the four best teams right now, because you don't want to give one team an advantage and give them a bye by pretty much playing Florida State because they have a third string quarterback. I didn't think the committee would have the balls to do what they did to place a 13-0 team not in the playoffs. I think it's brutal for Florida State. I think they deserve them to be in the playoffs, but in the same light, I am not complaining. The SEC champion, Alabama, is better than Florida State. And Alabama, I also don't want to discredit too much for having a loss, because that loss, Derek, was to Texas, the number 3 team in the country in the non-conference. Alabama had the guts to schedule a non-conference game against one of the best teams in the country. I don't want to knock them for losing that game too much, because I want to encourage these teams to continue to play games like that. So I'm not bent out of shape. I'm just surprised this is the way the committee went.
So in your terms, best teams, that's what they went by. Who are your four best teams? Because this is a disagreement that a lot of people have. But who are your four best teams? Obviously, Michigan and Washington are in there, but who are the other two? If you're talking about just best teams, not talking about resume, not talking about anything like that, who are your four best teams?
Michigan, Washington, probably Alabama, and Georgia. Those are probably the 4 best teams in the country.
So you think Georgia is better than Texas?
I do think Georgia's better than Texas, and I think at this point Alabama is better than Texas.
I can at least agree that might be better than Texas at this point, but I think Texas is a better football team than Georgia.
Why?
I think they have more of a complete offense. Their defense is like, if you're talking about ranking wise, I think Georgia's defense is probably top 5, and I think Texas is probably top 10. And I think the difference between Texas offense to Georgia's offense is not as big as Georgia's defense to Texas's defense.
I mean, I guess Texas had a lot of blemishes. They had a lot of games that could have gone against them in the middle of the season. They won a lot of close games against bad teams that should not have been in games. So, I mean, I understand that. I just think Georgia would beat Texas on a neutral field, and I think they do it pretty handily.
See, I think that's fair. I just think when you look at it, if you're talking about Georgia, what is their guy? Like, to me, Georgia's best player is Brock Bowers, and I don't think it's close. If you look at Texas, to say who their best player is, I feel like there's more of a collective group at wide receiver, at quarterback, like, that actually can win football games than Georgia's one guy. And we see it. Kansas City Chiefs are not as successful this year because they're so reliant on Travis Kelce that that's not working out for them this year. That's to me why I think Texas is better than Florida State. However, you talk about it, you leave out Florida State. Personally, I think this is the best job that the committee has done in a while. I think the only two knocks I have with the committee is, number one, why did you put Florida State out? I don't put Florida State out because they have a third string quarterback. That's not why I put Florida State out. Number two, did you put Florida State out because you don't want a blowout and you want revenue happening in these bowl games? If that's the case, that's not okay. Those are the two biggest things that if they had Florida State out, and those are the two reasons why they're out, to me that's ridiculous. I don't know how you feel about that, but to me that's ridiculous. I
Eric,
just think that Texas and Alabama are a better football team than Florida State. That's why I have them ahead of Florida State, because they talked about it. They talked about it multiple times. This is the 4 best teams. If you want to talk most deserving, that's okay. But in years past, they have made mistakes because they have said, okay, we're going to go with the 4 most deserving teams instead of the 4 best teams. And I think they made a reaction to Cincinnati getting boat raced in the playoff a couple years ago, that they realized that they made a mistake and they shouldn't have been in the playoff, and that's why they took out Florida State. That to me is why they did it, which I think is unacceptable. I just think what they did as a whole, the top 4, is the correct decision, but I think the way they went about it is incorrect.
well, yeah, and Florida State, they were left out because Jordan Travis is not there. That's the only reason they were left out. If Jordan Travis was healthy, Florida State's the number 3 seed, and they're playing Washington in the Sugar Bowl. Florida State was only left out because of Jordan Travis's injury. Now, it's a big injury, and they put player unavailability as one of the criteria for a reason. If Jordan Travis is healthy, this team can beat anyone in the country. It's unfortunate he's not healthy, and Tate Rodemaker's not healthy right now either. He'd probably return if they made the playoff, but he's not healthy right now either. And that's fair to look at. It sucks that an injury can derail. And like Jordan Travis said in his tweet, he wished he broke his leg earlier so people could see what a team he had around him. Which that sucks that he has to say something like that. But that is one of the keys they looked at. They looked at that and they looked at could Florida State hang? Two of the points you said you hate, they looked at both of those. And the only reason Florida State is out, if Jordan Travis is healthy, they're in the playoff. He's not healthy, so they're out. It sucks. It's not fair, but I mean, life's not fair. They picked the four best teams. And they kind of thread the line, I think, between four best and four most deserving, which I wasn't a huge fan of because, like I said, Georgia is one of the four best teams in the country. That's not even really disputable for me. So I don't really like that they thread the needle there. But again, I'm always the team who usually I'm always the guy who's usually rooting for the scenario to happen, like happened yesterday, where I want the four best. And like you said, Texas and Georgia is close. I'm not complaining about that at all. Alabama, usually I'm on the side of the SEC because the SEC can play with anyone. I know Alabama will give anybody a better game. Alabama could win the national championship. They're probably the best team currently in the playoff. But like a couple years ago, I was team Texas A&M over Notre Dame because I thought Texas and A&M had a stronger team. I want teams in there who can compete with the other team on the field, not go in and we know they're going to lose beforehand because that sucks. There's only two semifinal games. We want them to be good. So I am happy with the decision the committee made, but I will also recognize that it sucks and it's not fair to Florida State.
I think my only thing is if you put Florida, let's say Florida State would be in the playoff, to me they have to be the 3 seed. You cannot have Florida State as the 4 seed because if you have Florida State as the 4 seed, it doesn't make sense. It
I
doesn't
agree.
make sense. But I think it sucks for Florida State. We'll see what they do. Just going forward, but I think at the end of the day, I think they made the right decision. I just think you look at these teams, I just think this committee realized that they made mistakes in the past and they didn't want to repeat it and they wanted revenue. And let's be honest, Alabama, their fans are going to watch the games or go to the games more so than Florida State. That to me is just a fact.
Well,
Maybe some
nah, I
people
don't.
will disagree,
Nah,
but I
yeah.
think Bama fans are more intuitive with their team than Florida State.
No, that's a little crazy. Florida State has one of the best fan bases in the country too. There's no revenue aspect that's different here. It's the college football playoff. Both teams will make a ton of money. Florida State has a crazy fan base. They didn't factor any of that in. I guarantee that because they both have absurdly crazed fan bases. But it sucks for the Florida State fan base, and that's why you have Florida legislators, Florida Senator Rick Scott coming out demanding to see committee transcripts because they want to file lawsuits about how they should be in. They're not going to win any of those kinds of lawsuits, but it's just brutal for the fans. And I feel them. I couldn't imagine if my team was 13-0 and got left out of the playoff.
Before we go, I was watching a video earlier today, and it talked about Florida State AP coaches polls. They're in the top four now. If Florida State beats Georgia in their bowl game, which that's a huge if. And Michigan and Washington do not win the national championship in the college football playoff. There could be a shared college national championship because in the coaches poll and the AP poll, Florida State could be considered number one, but in the college football playoff rankings, they would not because obviously they did not win the title of the four. What are your thoughts on that scenario?
No, that's just stupid. There's no shared title. The only four teams who can win a national championship are the four teams playing in the playoff, and whoever wins the national championship game is the national champion.
Okay, so you were not in favor of how UCF said that they
No,
won the national
they won
championship.
nothing. UCF won nothing. They're a
I mean,
bunch
they
of
did beat Auburn in a
who cares? They beat an Auburn
bowl
team that
game.
lost in the SEC championship game and wanted to be anywhere else. If
No, I know,
Liberty
I agree.
if Liberty beats Oregon in the Fiesta Bowl, a game Oregon probably doesn't want to play in, and I feel bad that Oregon drew Liberty, like Penn State and Ole Miss should have drew Liberty, one of those teams. Oregon should have got to play Ohio State, or at least a game they could get up for. I don't understand why the committee made Oregon play Liberty. Usually it's the last ranked Power Five team to make the New Year's Six would play the Group of Five team. Somehow it's Oregon. You think they want to play Liberty? Absolutely not. And if they lose to Liberty, I'm not clamoring Liberty as the national champions.
That's fair. One last thing before we go. Boise State hires their interim head coach. What are your thoughts just overall?
I mean, it's not a home run hire, but it's a pretty dang good hire. The team clearly loves Spencer Danielson. Something clicked with Spencer Danielson. I'm sure they'll make some staff changes, bring in some guys Spencer likes, but he's been around this program forever. They love to hire people who have been around the program before. He's got an infectious energy and he's got a personality. Andy Avalos had zero personality. He never showed emotion on the sideline, and I hated that. Spencer Danielson's always fired up on the sideline. He's not afraid to chew a player out, and they also all love him. You saw the reaction. You said it gave you chills. It gave me chills watching Boise State players find out when Jeremiah Dickey, their athletic director, announced Spencer was the head coach. I like the hire. The home run category for me, like you said, Kellen Moore, Chris Peterson. If neither of those guys wanted it, I have no problem with coming back down to Spencer Danielson because there wasn't a hugely appealing candidate crop out there for Boise State. Spencer seems like a good guy. I hope nothing but the best. And I think as terms of making the playoff next year, that you can't say there's a group of 5 team in more positions than Boise State to do that.
Let's take a look at Spencer Danielson's hire.
First, congratulations on yesterday. I hope you know how much I love you. And because of that, it was important for us to go through a process, right? And I met with a couple of you, and I wanted to make sure I found the right person to lead this program. And I know it was a long process. It seems like forever for me, but the last 3 weeks has been challenging, but in a very positive way as well. I've seen this team come together. I've seen you respond like I've never seen a team respond before. It's what a Bronco is. I'm so grateful for you guys. I can't say enough of how much joy you bring me as your leader. I'm going to try not to get emotional. I love you guys. I know that you all had expectations for this search. I know that every single one of you has either tweeted at me, spoke about it in a press conference with me in the room, with my boss, thank you. I know how much you love Spencer. And I'm glad, because he is your new head coach.